The scream that tore from Sophia Bennett's throat echoed against cold stone walls 20 feet below the Earth's surface, swallowed by darkness so complete she could no longer tell if her eyes were open or closed. She had been down here for 2 days now, trapped in this abandoned well on the outskirts of Medicine Bow, Wyoming, and the August heat of 1878 seemed like a distant memory compared to the damp chill that had seeped into her bones. Her voice was nearly gone from calling for help, her lips cracked and bleeding, her throat raw as sandpaper. The bucket she had been trying to retrieve, the one that had fallen during her foolish attempt to fix the pulley system alone, sat mockingly at her feet in 6 inches of stagnant water. She had stopped crying after the first day when she realized tears only made her thirst worse. Sophia pressed her back against the curved wall and tried once more to find purchase with her boots on the slick stones, but her legs trembled with exhaustion and hunger. She was 22 years old, unmarried, and had been managing her late father's small ranch alone for the past 8 months since consumption had taken him. Her mother had died giving birth to a stillborn son when Sophia was 15, leaving her and her father to navigate the harsh Wyoming territory together. He had taught her to shoot, to ride, to read the weather and the land, but he had never taught her what to do when pride led her to attempt repairs she should have asked the neighbors for help with. The well sat on the far eastern boundary of her property, nearly a mile from the main house. She had ridden out alone on her mare, Juniper, 2 mornings ago to investigate why the cattle were not drinking from the trough this well fed. When she leaned over to peer down into the darkness, the rotted wooden cover had given way beneath her weight, and she had fallen, striking her shoulder and head on the way down. Juniper had bolted at the sound of splintering wood and Sophia's scream, and no amount of calling had brought the horse back. Now, as the light filtering from above told her it was afternoon of the second day, Sophia wondered if this was how she would die. Would they find her bones years from now, or would the well simply become her tomb, forgotten and filled in by time and weather? She thought of her father's grave on the hill behind the house, the wooden cross she had carved herself, and how there would be no one to do the same for her. She tried to call out again, but only a harsh whisper emerged. Her tongue felt thick and foreign in her mouth. She had long since drunk all the water she could reach, stagnant and foul-tasting though it was. The dampness that kept her cold also kept her from dying of thirst entirely, but she knew she could not last much longer. Owen Gallagher had been riding fence line for the Triple J Ranch for 6 years, ever since he had drifted into Medicine Bow as a lean 19-year-old with nothing but his horse, his saddle, and a reputation for being able to break even the wildest bronco. Now, 25, he was foreman of the outfit, trusted by old Julius Jensen to manage the day-to-day operations of the sprawling cattle ranch. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered and lean-hipped in the way of men who spent their lives in the saddle, with dark hair that fell past his collar and eyes the color of sage in summer. His face was weathered beyond his years, marked by sun and wind and the hardships of frontier life. He was checking the southern boundary fence where Triple J land bordered the old Bennett property when he heard it. At first he thought it was a bird, some hawk or eagle calling from a distance, but something about the sound made him rein in his buckskin gelding and sit still in the saddle, listening. The August sun beat down mercilessly, and heat shimmered up from the pale grass. There it was again, so faint he almost missed it, a sound that might have been human. Owen turned his horse toward the Bennett land and urged him into a trot. He knew Sophia Bennett by sight, had seen her in town on the rare occasion she came in for supplies. He knew her father had died and that she was trying to run the small ranch alone. He had thought more than once about riding over to offer help, but something had always stopped him. Perhaps it was the proud set of her shoulders, the way she met men's eyes directly in a town where most women kept their gazes down. Perhaps it was the fact that he knew what the townspeople would say about a single man spending time with an unmarried woman. Or perhaps it was because every time he had seen her, with her honey-colored hair pinned severely back and her calico dresses worn and mended, something had stirred in his chest that he was not quite ready to name. The sound came again, and this time Owen was certain someone was calling for help, the voice barely more than a croak. He kicked his horse into a gallop, standing in his stirrups to scan the landscape. The Bennett property was a patchwork of sage-covered hills and small valleys, with a creek running through the western portion. He knew there was an old well somewhere out here, one that predated the current house, left over from when squatters had first tried to settle this land before the Bennett family had filed their claim. His horse's ears swiveled forward, picking up the sound before Owen located its source. There, half hidden by tall grass and a stand of chokecherry bushes, was the old stone well. The wooden cover lay in pieces around the opening, and Owen's heart lurched in his chest as he dismounted at a run. He dropped to his knees at the well's edge and leaned over, peering into the darkness. "Hello? Is someone down there?" The silence that followed lasted so long, he thought he had imagined the whole thing, but then a voice, thin and cracked and unmistakably female, drifted up from the depths. "Help me, please." "I am coming to get you," Owen called down, his mind already racing through what he would need. "Can you tell me your name? Are you hurt?" Sophia Bennett. "I fell. 2 days ago." 2 days. Owen closed his eyes briefly, imagining what 2 days trapped in that hole would do to a person. "Miss Bennett, I need you to hold on a little longer. I am going to get rope and come down for you. Can you do that?" "Yes." The word was barely audible. Owen ran back to his horse and began untying the coiled lariat from his saddle, 60 feet of good hemp rope, but he had no idea how deep the well was. He tied one end to his saddle horn and the other around his own waist, then tested the stone rim of the well. It seemed solid enough. He pulled his canteen from the saddle and slung it over his shoulder, then retrieved the extra rope he kept in his saddlebag and tied it around his chest under his arms. "I am coming down now," he called into the darkness. "Get as far from the center as you can. Press yourself against the wall." He lowered himself over the edge, boots finding the gaps between stones, using the rope to control his descent. The air grew cooler and damper as he dropped below the surface, and the light faded to a dim twilight. His eyes adjusted slowly, and he could make out the circular walls, the dark water at the bottom. And there, pressed against the stones like a shadow, was Sophia Bennett. Even in the dimness, he could see she was in bad shape. Her dress was torn and filthy. Her hair had come loose from its pins and hung in tangles around her face, and she held one arm close to her body as if injured. But her eyes, when they met his, were clear and aware despite everything she had endured. "I have got you," Owen said, dropping the last few feet to land in the cold water beside her. It came to mid-calf, and he could feel the muddy bottom sucking at his boots. He unslung the canteen and held it to her lips. "Slow sips? Not too much at once, or you will be sick." Sophia's hands shook as she reached for the canteen, and he kept his own hands wrapped around it, helping her guide it to her mouth. She drank greedily despite his warning, and he had to pull it away after a few swallows. "I know you want more, but trust me, give it a minute, then you can have more." "Thank you," she whispered, and even hoarse and broken, her voice carried a musicality that did something to his insides. "I thought I was going to die down here." "Not today," Owen said firmly. He looked up at the circle of bright sky far above them. "Can you hold on to me? I am going to climb us out of here, but I need both hands free, and I need you to hold tight." "My shoulder," Sophia began, and he saw her wince. "I think something is wrong with it. I landed on it when I fell." Owen considered this, then began unknotting the rope from around his own waist. "Then we will do it differently. I am going to tie this around you, and my horse is going to pull you up while I guide you from down here. Once you are up, I will climb out on my own." "No!" Sophia's voice was stronger now, fueled by the water and by hope. "What if the rope breaks? What if your horse spooks? You will be trapped down here just like I was." "The rope will not break, and Copper is the steadiest horse in Wyoming," Owen assured her, but he appreciated her concern even in her desperate state. "Miss Bennett, I need you to trust me. I have been doing ranch work since I was 12 years old. I know what I am doing." Sophia studied him for a long moment, and even in the dimness of the well, he felt the weight of her gaze. Finally, she nodded. "All right, but if something goes wrong, you climb out and leave me. I will not be responsible for another person dying because of my foolishness." "Nothing is going to go wrong, and nobody is dying today," Owen said. He moved closer to her in the confined space, and the well suddenly seemed much smaller. He could smell damp earth and stone, the stagnant water, and underneath it something else, something that was uniquely her. His hands shook slightly as he wrapped the rope around her waist and chest, creating a makeshift harness. "This is going to put pressure on your shoulder when you start to rise. It is going to hurt." "I can handle pain," Sophia said quietly. Owen believed her. He finished securing the rope and tugged on it 3 times, the signal he had arranged with his horse. Copper was trained to respond to such signals, to back away from pressure. The rope went taut, and Sophia gasped as she was lifted off her feet. "Feet against the wall," Owen instructed, steadying her with his hands on her waist. "Walk up it as you rise. I will push from down here." The ascent was agonizing to watch. Every few feet, Sophia had to pause, her breathing harsh and pained, her good arm clutching the rope above her head. Owen called encouragements up to her, told her how well she was doing, how close she was getting. When she was about halfway up, he boosted himself onto a protruding stone and pushed against her boots, giving her extra momentum. His own muscles burned with the effort of maintaining his precarious position, but he did not let go until she was high enough that his help would make no difference. The sunlight seemed to swallow her as she reached the top, and Owen heard her sob of relief as she tumbled over the edge and onto solid ground. He waited, heart pounding, until her face appeared over the rim, pale and streaked with dirt and tears. "I am up," she called down, her voice stronger already. "I am safe." "Good. Now, move back from the edge in case any stones come loose," Owen instructed. He did not wait for her response before beginning his own climb. Without the rope around his waist, he had to rely entirely on his strength and the gaps between stones. His fingers found holds his eyes could barely see, and his boots wedged into spaces barely wide enough to support his weight. He was strong, his years of ranch work having built muscles that most men would envy. But by the time he hauled himself over the rim of the well, his arms were shaking. He lay on his back in the grass for a moment, chest heaving, the Wyoming sky stretching blue and infinite above him. Then Sophia's face appeared over him, blocking out the sun, and he found himself looking directly into eyes the color of creek water, in spring, green and brown and gold all mixed together. "You saved my life," she said, and a tear tracked down her dirty cheek. Owen pushed himself into a sitting position, suddenly aware of how close they were, how alone they were out here on the prairie. Anyone would have done the same. "But you are the one who did it," Sophia insisted. She swayed slightly, and he reached out to steady her, his hands finding her uninjured arm. "I do not even know your name." "Owen Gallagher. I work for the Triple J Ranch." He studied her face, seeing the pallor beneath the dirt, the way her pupils were not quite the same size. "You hit your head when you fell. You need to see a doctor." "The nearest doctor is in Medicine Bow, and I do not have money for his services," Sophia said, but her voice lacked conviction. She was fading fast now that the immediate crisis was over, running on nothing but willpower and adrenaline. "We will worry about that later," Owen said. He stood and helped her to her feet, feeling her sway against him. "Where is your horse?" "She bolted when I fell. I do not know where she went." Sophia looked around as if only now realizing she had no way home. "Juniper usually comes back on her own when she calms down." "Then she is probably at your barn right now, wondering where her dinner is," Owen said. He whistled for Copper, who trotted over obediently. "I am going to put you in the saddle and walk you back to my place. It is closer than yours, and my boss's wife can look after you while I ride into town for the doctor." "I cannot impose like that," Sophia protested. But it was a weak protest. She was exhausted, hurt, and alone. Pride was a luxury she could not afford right now. "You are not imposing. You are accepting help that any decent neighbor would offer." Owen lifted her carefully into the saddle, mindful of her injured shoulder. She bit her lip hard enough to draw blood, but did not cry out. "Besides, I am not giving you a choice. You can be gracious about it, or I can tie you to the saddle. But either way, you are coming with me." Despite everything, Sophia laughed, a small, breathless sound. "You are very bossy, Mr. Gallagher." "So, I have been told, Miss Bennett." He took Copper's reins and began leading them toward the Triple J Ranch, walking beside the horse so he could catch Sophia if she started to fall. "And you can call me Owen. I figure pulling someone out of a well puts us past formalities." The walk to the ranch took nearly an hour, and by the time the buildings came into view, Sophia was barely conscious in the saddle. Owen had to hold her upright with one arm while leading the horse with the other. Martha Jensen, Julius's wife, was in the yard feeding chickens when they arrived, and she took one look at Sophia and immediately took charge. "Get her into the house," Martha commanded, scattering chickens in her wake as she hurried ahead. She was a solid woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and the capable hands of someone who had raised 7 children to adulthood on the frontier. "What happened to her?" "Fell in that old well on her property." Been down there 2 days, Owen explained, carefully lifting Sophia down from the saddle. She stirred in his arms, mumbling something he could not quite make out. I need to ride for the doctor. You will do no such thing until you have drunk some water and caught your breath, Martha said firmly. You look about ready to fall over yourself. Julius! The old rancher emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. When he saw Owen carrying Sophia, his weathered face creased with concern. What is all this? Bennett girl fell in a well. Owen pulled her out. We need the doctor, Martha summarized efficiently. You ride into town while I tend to her. Owen needs to rest. Julius nodded once and headed for the barn to saddle a fresh horse. Owen carried Sophia into the ranch house, through the neat front room with its hand-hewn furniture and rag rugs, and into the spare bedroom Martha indicated. He laid her gently on the quilt-covered bed, and Martha immediately began removing Sophia's torn and muddy boots. Out now, Martha said, making shooing motions at Owen. I need to get her out of these wet clothes and cleaned up before the doctor arrives. There is stew on the stove and fresh bread. Help yourself. Owen retreated, though he found himself reluctant to leave Sophia in someone else's care, even someone as capable as Martha Jensen. He went to the kitchen and ladled stew into a bowl, more because Martha would fuss if he did not eat than because he was hungry. The reality of what had nearly happened was settling over him like a cold blanket. If he had not been riding fence line on that particular stretch of land, if he had not heard her faint cries, if he had decided it was just a bird and ridden on, Sophia Bennett would have died in that well. The thought made his hands shake as he lifted the spoon to his mouth. Dr. Amos Pritchard arrived 2 hours later, a thin man with spectacles and gray hair who had been practicing medicine on the frontier for 30 years. He examined Sophia thoroughly while Martha and Owen waited in the front room. When he finally emerged, his expression was serious, but not grim. She has a badly bruised shoulder, possibly a slight separation, but nothing broken. The head injury concerns me more. She has a concussion, and she needs rest and observation for the next several days. The exposure and dehydration have weakened her considerably. She will recover, but it will take time. Dr. Pritchard looked at Martha. Can she stay here? She should not be alone. Of course she can stay here, Martha said before Owen could speak. I will put her in the spare room and look after her myself. I will pay the doctor's fee, Owen said, reaching for his wallet. I do not think that is appropriate, Mr. Gallagher, Dr. Pritchard said carefully, unless you are related to Miss Bennett in some way. He saved her life, Martha interjected. That gives him the right to help pay for her care if he wants to. I will send the bill to Miss Bennett when she is recovered, the doctor said diplomatically. Right now, she needs rest. I will check on her again in 2 days. After the doctor left, Owen stood awkwardly in the front room, unsure whether he should leave or stay. Martha seemed to sense his dilemma and smiled at him. You can peek in on her if you like. She is sleeping now, but I'm sure she would want to know you are still here when she wakes. Owen nodded and walked quietly to the spare room. Sophia lay in the narrow bed, clean now and dressed in one of Martha's nightgowns. Her hair had been brushed and braided, and the color was starting to return to her cheeks. She looked young and vulnerable in a way she never had when he had seen her in town, always so determined to appear strong and capable. He watched the gentle rise and fall of her breathing for a long moment before returning to the front room. I should go check on her animals, he said to Martha. Her horse ran off, and she has cattle that need tending. That is thoughtful of you, Martha said. Julius can spare you for a few days if you need to help out over there. Lord knows the girl has been trying to do too much on her own since her father passed. Owen nodded his thanks and headed out to the barn. As he saddled Copper, Julius appeared beside him. You did a good thing today, son. Not many men would have heard those cries or taken the time to investigate. I just happened to be in the right place, Owen said, uncomfortable with the praise. Maybe the good Lord put you exactly where you needed to be. Julius clapped him on the shoulder. Take tomorrow off to help get her affairs in order. I can spare you for that. Owen rode to the Bennett ranch as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that turned the prairie grass to gold. The small ranch house sat on a gentle rise, with a barn and a few outbuildings scattered around it. Sophia's mare, Juniper, was indeed standing by the barn door, still wearing her saddle. Owen dismounted and spent the next hour tending to both horses, feeding Sophia's small herd of cattle, and gathering eggs from the chickens. He found himself noticing details about how she lived. The garden plot carefully weeded despite the summer heat, the neatly stacked firewood, the repair work on the barn door that had been done competently, if not expertly. She was managing, but barely, and only through sheer determination. He returned to the Triple J Ranch after dark and bedded down in the bunkhouse with the other hands. But sleep was elusive, and when it finally came, it was troubled by dreams of stone walls and darkness and a voice calling for help that he could not quite reach. Sophia woke in a strange bed, confused and disoriented. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains, and she could hear women's voices speaking softly somewhere nearby. She tried to sit up, and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through her shoulder and her head began to pound. "Easy now," Martha said, appearing in the doorway with a tray. "You have been through quite an ordeal. The doctor said you need to take it slow." Memory came flooding back. The well, the darkness, the cold water, and Owen Gallagher's voice calling down to her that he was coming. Owen Gallagher pulling her to safety. Owen Gallagher's face above her, haloed by the sun, as she lay in the grass and realized she was alive. "Where is he?" Sophia asked, and her voice came out rough and cracked. "Mr. Gallagher, I mean. Owen, is he here?" "He rode over to your place to tend to your animals," Martha said, setting the tray on the bedside table. It held a bowl of broth, some bread, and a cup of water. "He will be back this afternoon. Right now, you need to eat something and drink as much water as you can." Sophia allowed Martha to fuss over her, though it felt strange to be cared for by someone else. She had been managing on her own for so long, had become so used to shouldering every burden alone, that accepting help felt almost foreign. But she was also profoundly grateful. The terror of those 2 days in the well was still fresh. The certainty that she was going to die alone in the dark, and the overwhelming relief when Owen had appeared above her, like an answer to prayers she had been too parched to voice. "How did he find me?" Sophia asked between careful spoonfuls of broth. "My property is not anywhere near the Triple J Ranch." "He was riding fence line on the southern boundary. He heard you calling." Martha sat on the edge of the bed, her expression kind. "You are lucky he was there. That old well is far enough from everything that you might not have been found for weeks." Sophia closed her eyes, not wanting to think about that possibility. "I was so foolish. I should have asked someone for help with the pump mechanism instead of trying to fix it myself. Should have, could have, would have. None of that matters now." Martha patted her good hand. "You are safe, and you are going to recover. That is what is important." Sophia spent the rest of the morning sleeping, waking only when Martha brought her more water or checked her injuries. The doctor returned in the afternoon and pronounced himself satisfied with her progress, though he reiterated that she needed rest and could not return to running her ranch alone for at least another week. "I do not have a week," Sophia protested. "I have animals that need tending, and if I do not get my hay cut soon, I will lose the crop." "Your animals are being tended to," Martha said firmly, "and we will figure something out about the hay. Right now, you need to focus on getting better." It was late afternoon when Owen returned. Sophia heard his voice in the front room, speaking to Martha in low tones, and her heart did an odd little skip in her chest. She pushed herself up in bed, wincing at the pull in her shoulder, and tried to smooth down her borrowed nightgown and the braid Martha had plaited her hair into. When he appeared in the doorway, hat in hand, she was struck by how tall he was, how broad his shoulders seemed in the frame of the door. He looked tired, with circles under his sage-colored eyes, but he smiled when he saw her sitting up. "You are looking better," he said, staying in the doorway as if unsure whether he should enter. "Thanks to you," Sophia said. "Martha tells me you have been caring for my animals. I do not know how to thank you for everything you have done." "No thanks needed." Owen shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Your mare is fine. She came back on her own, like you said. The cattle had water, and I moved them to your north pasture where there is better grazing. The chickens are fine." "You did not have to do all that," Sophia said, but she was touched by his thoroughness. "Could not leave them to suffer just because their owner had an accident," Owen said practically. He finally stepped into the room, though he stayed near the door. "Doctor says you need to stay put for a week. I was thinking, if you are agreeable, I could ride over each day and take care of the necessary chores. Nothing major, just feeding and watering and keeping an eye on things." "I cannot ask you to do that," Sophia protested. "You have your own work to do." "You are not asking, I am offering." Owen's tone left no room for argument. "Besides, Julius has given me leave to help out. Consider it being neighborly." Sophia studied him, this man who had saved her life and was now offering to manage her ranch while she recovered. She barely knew him, had only seen him a handful of times in town, but there was something solid and trustworthy about him, something that made her want to accept his help despite her ingrained self-reliance. "All right," she said finally, "but only for a few days. I will be back on my feet soon, and I can manage on my own." Something flickered in Owen's eyes, an expression she could not quite read. "You have been managing on your own for a long time, have you not? Ever since your father passed." "I do not have much choice," Sophia said quietly. "There is no one else." "Maybe that was true before," Owen said, his voice gentle, "but it does not have to be true now. You have neighbors who would be willing to help if you would let them." "I do not want to be anyone's charity case," Sophia said, a defensive edge creeping into her tone. "It is not charity to accept help when you need it," Owen replied, "and it is not charity to offer help to someone who could have died if things had gone differently. It is just being human." Sophia felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She would not cry in front of this man who had already seen her at her weakest. "I am not used to accepting help." "I know, I can see that." Owen took another step into the room, and suddenly he was close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, the sunburn across the bridge of his nose. "But maybe you could try, just this once, just until you are back on your feet." "Just until I am back on my feet," Sophia agreed, and something passed between them in that moment, something that felt like the beginning of something neither of them had names for yet. Over the next few days, a routine developed. Owen would arrive at the Jensen Ranch each evening after finishing his work at the Triple J, would spend a few minutes visiting with Sophia before heading over to her property to handle the evening chores. He would return the next morning to do the same before starting his own workday. Sophia grew stronger each day, the color returning to her cheeks, her movements becoming less stiff and painful. They talked during his visits, small conversations at first about ranch work and weather and the state of her cattle. But gradually, the conversations deepened. Sophia told him about her father, about how he had taught her everything he knew about ranching, about how she was determined to keep his legacy alive, even though everyone in Medicine Bow expected her to fail and sell out. Owen told her about his own past, about growing up on a hardscrabble farm in Missouri, about losing his parents to cholera when he was 18 and heading west with nothing but his horse and his skills. He told her about the years he had spent drifting from ranch to ranch, never staying anywhere long until he had landed at the Triple J and found in Julius Jensen a man who treated his workers fairly and paid them honestly. "Why did you stay?" Sophia asked one evening as they sat on Martha's front porch, watching the sun set over the prairie. She was well enough now to be out of bed, though her shoulders still ached and she tired easily. "I guess I got tired of drifting," Owen said. He was whittling a piece of wood, his hands moving with easy competence. "I wanted to belong somewhere, to build something instead of always moving on." "Do you think about having your own place someday?" Sophia asked. "Your own ranch?" "Sometimes." Owen glanced at her, then back at his whittling. "It takes money to buy land and stock, though. More money than a ranch hand makes, even a foreman." "My father started with nothing but a homestead claim and a lot of stubbornness," Sophia said. "He said that was all anyone really needed to make it out here." "Your father sounds like he was a wise man." "He was." Sophia's voice was soft with memory. "He believed in this land, in what it could become. Even when things were hard, even when we lost cattle to harsh winters or disease, he never gave up. I want to honor that. I want to prove that his faith in this place was not misplaced." Owen stopped whittling and looked at her fully. In the golden light of the setting sun, she looked like something out of a painting, her hair loose around her shoulders for once, her face turned toward the horizon. "You are going to make it," he said with conviction. "You are strong enough and stubborn enough to do whatever you set your mind to." "I feel like I have already failed," Sophia admitted. "I nearly died because I was too proud to ask for help with a simple repair." "You did not fail. You had an accident. There is a difference." Owen set down his whittling and shifted closer to her on the porch steps. "And you are not too proud now. You are letting me help, letting Martha help. That takes its own kind of strength." Sophia turned to look at him and found him closer than she had realized, close enough that she could see the stubble on his jaw, the way his hair curled slightly at the collar of his shirt, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body in the cooling evening air. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "Why are you helping me?" Owen was quiet for a long moment, and Sophia thought he might not answer. Then he said, equally softly, "Because when I heard your voice coming up from that well, when I realized someone was trapped down there, something in my chest went tight, and when I saw it was you, when I recognized you, that tightness got worse. I have been watching you for months, Sophia. Watching you come into town, with your head held high, even though I know people talk about you behind your back. Watching you manage a ranch that would challenge most men. Watching you be brave and strong and determined. And I kept thinking that someone like you should not have to do it all alone." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. "Owen, I know it is too soon," Owen said quickly. "I know you barely know me, and you have been through a trauma, and this is probably the worst possible timing. But I cannot keep pretending that I am just being neighborly. I care about what happens to you. I want to help you succeed, and I want to get to know you better, if you will let me." Sophia's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. No man had ever spoken to her like this, with such honesty and vulnerability. The few boys who had courted her before her father died had been tongue-tied and awkward, more interested in her property than in her. But Owen was looking at her like she was something precious, something worth pursuing. "I would like that," she said, and her voice came out barely above a whisper. "I would like to get to know you better, too." Owen's smile was slow and warm, transforming his weathered face. "Good, that is real good." They sat together on the porch until the stars came out, talking quietly, their shoulders just barely touching. Neither of them noticed Martha watching from the kitchen window, a satisfied smile on her face. A week after Owen had pulled her from the well, Sophia was well enough to return home. Martha had fussed over her like a mother hen, making sure she had plenty of food to take with her, and extracting promises that she would not overdo it. Owen drove her home in the Jensen's wagon, with Juniper tied to the back. The house looked the same as she had left it, but somehow everything felt different. Sophia stood in the front yard, looking at the small cabin her father had built with his own hands, and felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had come so close to never seeing this place again, to never feeling the Wyoming wind on her face or hearing the cattle lowing in the distance. "You all right?" Owen asked, coming to stand beside her with her bag of belongings. "Yes," Sophia said, and she meant it. "I am just glad to be home." Owen carried her bag inside and spent the next hour checking all the repairs and improvements her father had made to the property, making sure everything was secure and in working order. Sophia watched him move around her home with easy confidence and felt something settle in her chest. This felt right, having him here, having someone to share the burdens and the joys of this place. "I will keep coming by every day to help with the heavy work," Owen said when he was ready to leave, "at least until your shoulder is fully healed." "You have already done so much," Sophia protested, but her heart was not in it. The truth was, she wanted him to keep coming by. She had grown used to seeing him every day, to their conversations and his steady presence. "I know," Owen said with a small smile, "but I am going to do it anyway. You might as well stop arguing and accept that you are stuck with me for a while." "I suppose I can live with that," Sophia said, returning his smile. Owen reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering for just a moment against her cheek. "I will see you tomorrow," he said quietly, and then he was gone, leaving Sophia standing in her doorway with her heart racing and her cheek tingling where he had touched her. True to his word, Owen came by every day. He would arrive in the early morning before heading to his own job, would help her with the tasks that required 2 people or more strength than her healing shoulder could provide. He fixed the well cover, building a new one from sturdy timber, and securing it firmly so no one else would fall through. He helped her mend fence line and move cattle and cut the hay that she had been so worried about losing. But more than the physical help, he provided companionship. They worked side by side, fell into an easy rhythm that felt natural and right. They shared meals, simple fare that Sophia cooked or that Martha sent along with Owen. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's habits and preferences, discovering shared opinions and friendly disagreements. One afternoon in early September, nearly a month after the accident, they were mending fence on the far western boundary of her property. The weather had turned cooler with a hint of autumn in the air, and the aspens were beginning to show gold at their tips. Sophia was holding a post steady while Owen hammered it into place, and she found herself admiring the play of muscles in his forearms, the way his hair fell across his forehead when he worked. "What are you staring at?" Owen asked, looking up with a grin that said he knew exactly what she had been staring at. Sophia felt her cheeks heat. "Nothing, just watching you work." "Uh-huh." Owen set down the hammer and wiped his forehead with his sleeve. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you never marry? A woman as pretty and capable as you, I would have thought men would be lining up." Sophia looked out across the prairie, considering how to answer. "My father needed me after my mother died, and then, after he was gone, I had the ranch to think about. Besides, most men around here want a wife who will cook and clean and give them children, not one who wants to run cattle and mend fences." "Most men are fools," Owen said bluntly. "A woman who can do all that and wants to run a ranch besides, that is something special." "Is that so?" Sophia felt a smile tugging at her lips. "That is so." Owen moved closer, and Sophia's breath quickened. They had shared many moments of closeness over the past weeks, small touches and long looks. But there was something different in the air today, something charged with possibility. "Owen," she began, but she was not sure what she wanted to say. He reached up and cupped her face in his hands, calloused and warm against her skin. "I have been wanting to do this since the day I pulled you out of that well," he said softly. "But I wanted to wait until you were healed, until you were sure it was what you wanted too. So, I am asking you now, Sophia Bennett. Can I kiss you?" Sophia's answer was to rise on her toes and press her lips to his, answering his question with action instead of words. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of them learning the shape and taste of each other. But then Owen pulled her closer, deepening the kiss, and Sophia felt like she was falling again. Only this time, there was no fear, only exhilaration. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I am in love with you," he said simply. "I think I have been since that first day, but I know it for certain now. I love your strength and your stubbornness and your determination. I love how you care for your animals and your land. I love the way you look at the sunset like it is the first time you have ever seen it. I love you, Sophia, and I want to be with you if you will have me." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks, but they were happy tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "I did not know it was possible to feel this way, to want someone this much. But I do. I love you, Owen Gallagher, and I want to build a life with you." Owen kissed her again, and this time there was promise in it, a future stretching out before them, full of possibility and hope. They talked long into the evening, sitting on the porch of her cabin, making plans. Owen wanted to marry her, wanted to help her run the ranch and build it into something even bigger. He had saved money over his years at the Triple J, enough to buy more cattle, to make improvements to the property. Together, they could make the Bennett Ranch thrive. "What about your job?" Sophia asked practically. "Julius depends on you." "I will talk to him," Owen said. "He is a good man. He will understand. And I will help out at the Triple J when you do not need me here, at least until we are more established. We will make it work." "We will make it work," Sophia repeated, and she believed it. Together, they could do anything. Owen spoke to Julius the next day, and as he had predicted, the old rancher was understanding. "I figured this was coming," Julius said with a chuckle. "From the way you have been riding over there every day, it was clear you were sweet on her. Martha has been predicting a wedding since the day you pulled her out of that well." "I hope we can still count on your friendship," Owen said, "and I will still help out here when I can, at least for the busy seasons." "You are always welcome at the Triple J," Julius assured him, "and that girl is lucky to have you. You are a good man, Owen Gallagher. You will do right by her." "I intend to," Owen said seriously. The wedding took place in October, just as the aspens turned to gold and the prairie grass faded to amber. It was a small affair, held in the church in Medicine Bow, with Martha and Julius standing as witnesses and a handful of neighbors attending. Sophia wore a simple dress of blue calico that brought out the green in her eyes, and Owen wore his best shirt and pants, his dark hair slicked back and his boots polished to a shine. As the preacher led them through their vows, Sophia looked at the man standing beside her and marveled at how her life had changed. 3 months ago, she had been alone, struggling to keep her ranch afloat, terrified that she would lose everything her father had built. She had fallen into a well and had been certain she was going to die. But Owen had heard her cries. He had climbed down into the darkness and had pulled her to light. And in doing so, he had given her not just her life back, but a future she had never dared to dream of. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher said. "You may kiss your bride." Owen cupped her face in his hands, just as he had the day in the pasture, and kissed her gently. Sophia felt tears on her cheeks, but this time they were tears of pure joy. The first year of their marriage was hard work but filled with happiness. They expanded the herd, repaired buildings, and improved the irrigation system. Owen proved to be as capable a rancher as Sophia had known he would be, and together they were stronger than either had been alone. They worked dawn to dusk during the spring and summer, built up their reserves for the harsh Wyoming winter. But it was not all work. There were evenings spent on the porch, watching the stars come out, talking about their dreams and plans. There were Sunday mornings when they would sleep late and make love slowly, learning every inch of each other with tender attention. There were trips into Medicine Bow for supplies that turned into opportunities to walk hand in hand down the main street, no longer caring what the townspeople thought. There were dinners at the Jensen Ranch, where Martha would feed them until they were stuffed, and Julius would tell stories of the old days. In the spring of 1879, Sophia discovered she was pregnant. She told Owen one evening as they sat by the fire, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting on his chest. For a moment, he said nothing, and she worried that perhaps he was not ready, that perhaps the news was too much too soon. But then he pulled back to look at her face, and she saw that his eyes were wet with tears. "A baby?" he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We are going to have a baby?" "Yes," Sophia said, laughing through her own tears. "You are going to be a father." Owen kissed her then, pouring all his love and joy and wonder into that kiss. When he pulled back, he placed his hand gently on her still flat belly. "I am going to do right by you both," he promised. "I am going to give this child the kind of life I never had, full of love and stability and opportunity." "I know you will," Sophia said softly. "You are going to be an amazing father." The pregnancy was not easy. Sophia was sick for the first few months, could barely keep food down, and lost weight despite Owen's efforts to tempt her with her favorite foods. But by the time summer arrived, the sickness had passed, and she bloomed with health. Her belly grew round, and Owen would spend his evenings with his hand resting on it, feeling their child kick and move. They prepared for the baby together, building a cradle from pine wood that Owen carved with intricate patterns, sewing tiny clothes and blankets, setting up a corner of their bedroom as a nursery. Martha was nearly as excited as they were, constantly coming by with advice and gifts and offers to help with the delivery when the time came. The baby came in November, just as the first snow was beginning to fall. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Owen, pacing outside the bedroom where Martha and the doctor were attending to Sophia, thought he might go mad with worry. But finally, just as dawn was breaking, he heard the thin, wailing cry of a newborn, and Martha appeared in the doorway with a smile on her face. "You have a son," she said, "a big, healthy boy, and Sophia is tired but doing well." Owen rushed into the room to find Sophia propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. He approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the red, wrinkled face of his son. The baby had dark hair like his own and was staring up at him with unfocused eyes, one tiny fist waving in the air. "He is perfect," Owen whispered, reaching out to touch the baby's soft cheek. "You are perfect." "We are calling him Samuel," Sophia said softly. "After my father, Samuel David Gallagher." Owen felt tears spill down his cheeks as he carefully took his son from Sophia's arms. The baby was so small, so fragile, and yet Owen had never felt such a surge of protective love in his life. This was his son, his and Sophia's, a living proof of their love, a promise of the future they were building together. "Hello, Samuel," he said softly. "I am your papa, and I am going to love you and keep you safe for all of my days." The first year of Samuel's life was a blur of sleepless nights and constant wonder. Owen discovered that he loved being a father, loved watching his son grow and change, loved the way Samuel would grab his finger with his tiny hand and hold on with surprising strength. Sophia was a natural mother, patient and loving even when exhausted, and Owen fell in love with her all over again, watching her with their child. The ranch continued to prosper. They were able to buy more land, to expand their herd even further. Owen's reputation as a fair dealer and a skilled rancher spread, and they began to get contracts to supply cattle to the railroad crews pushing west. The money was good, better than either of them had dreamed of, and they were able to make improvements to the house, adding on a proper nursery and a second bedroom for future children. Samuel was 2 when Sophia became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and she carried the baby with more energy and less sickness. The birth, too, was easier, and in the summer of 1882, they welcomed a daughter into the world. They named her Clara Emmeline, and she was the image of her mother, with honey-colored hair and those same creek-water eyes. Owen thought his heart might burst from the love he felt for his family. He would come in from working the ranch to find Sophia in the kitchen with Clara in her arms and Samuel at her feet, helping to stir a pot or set the table, and he would have to pause in the doorway just to take in the scene. This was everything he had never known he wanted, everything he had been searching for during all those years of drifting. The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and growth. Samuel grew tall and strong, with his father's build and his mother's quick mind. He loved the ranch, loved working alongside Owen, learning everything he could about cattle and horses and the land. Clara was gentler, more thoughtful, but no less capable. She could ride as well as any boy, could shoot straight and mend fence when needed. But she also had a gift for growing things, and the garden she tended became the envy of everyone in Medicine Bow. In 1885, they welcomed another son, Thomas Henry, and 2 years later, a third son, William James. The house rang with the sounds of children, with laughter and arguments and the chaos of a growing family. Owen and Sophia were busier than ever, but they made time for each other, stealing moments alone on the porch after the children were asleep, or taking rides across the property on Sunday afternoons. "Do you ever think about that day?" Sophia asked one evening as they sat watching the sunset. They were in their mid-30s now, their faces lined with sun and experience, their hands rough from work. But when Owen looked at his wife, he still saw the young woman he had pulled from the well, still felt that same surge of love and protectiveness. "What day?" he asked, though he knew. "The day you found me. The day you saved my life." Sophia leaned against him, fitting perfectly against his side as she always had. "Sometimes I think about how different everything would be if you had not been riding fence line that day, if you had not heard me calling." "I think about it too," Owen admitted. "I think about how I almost did not investigate, thought it might just be a bird. I think about how close I came to losing you before I ever really knew you." "But you did investigate," Sophia said softly. "You heard me, and you came, and you pulled me to light. You saved my life, Owen, and then you gave me a life worth saving." Owen turned to look at her fully, seeing the tears glistening in her eyes. "You gave me just as much. Before I met you, I was drifting, just going through the motions. You gave me purpose and belonging and a family. You gave me a reason to put down roots and build something lasting." "We built it together," Sophia said. "Everything we have, we made it together." "Yes," Owen agreed. He pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. Together. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. By 1890, the Gallagher Ranch, as it was now known, was one of the most successful operations in the territory. They employed several hands to help with the work, had built a larger house to accommodate their growing family, and had established a reputation for honesty and quality that brought buyers from across Wyoming and beyond. Samuel, now in his early 20s, had grown into a fine young man. He had his father's steady nature and his mother's business sense, and he was taking on more and more of the ranch management, allowing Owen to slow down slightly. He had begun courting a girl from Medicine Bow, the daughter of the general store owner, and Owen suspected there would be a wedding within the year. Clara, at 18, was beautiful and capable, with no shortage of young men vying for her attention. But she was in no hurry to marry, preferring to help her mother with the younger children and tend to her ever-expanding garden. Thomas and William, now 5 and 3, were wild and energetic, keeping everyone on their toes. One evening in early autumn, as the family gathered for dinner, Samuel made an announcement. "Sarah and I are getting married," he said, his face flushing with pride and nervousness. "I asked her father's permission, and he agreed. We are thinking a spring wedding, if that is all right with you." Sophia's face lit up with joy, and she hurried around the table to embrace her oldest son. "Oh, Samuel, I am so happy for you. Sarah is a wonderful girl. You have chosen well." Owen stood and clasped his son's hand, then pulled him into a hug. "You are a good man, son. You will build a good life together." As the family celebrated, Owen caught Sophia's eye across the table. She was smiling, but he saw the bittersweet emotion there, the knowledge that their children were growing up, starting families of their own. Time was passing, their babies were becoming adults, and life was moving forward as it always did. Later that night, after the children were in bed, Owen and Sophia took their usual places on the porch. The air was cool with the promise of winter, and the stars were brilliant in the clear Wyoming sky. "Our baby is getting married," Sophia said softly. "It seems like just yesterday I was holding him in my arms for the first time." "I know," Owen said, pulling her close. "But we raised him right. He is ready for this." "We raised them all right," Sophia agreed. "They are good children, kind and honest and hardworking. Everything we could have hoped for." "They get that from you," Owen said. "From us," Sophia corrected. She tilted her face up to look at him. "We have been lucky, Owen. Despite everything we have been through, despite how hard things have been at times, we have been so lucky." "Not lucky," Owen said softly. "Blessed. We have been blessed beyond measure." Samuel's wedding in the spring of 1891 was a grand affair by Medicine Bow standards. The church was packed with friends and neighbors, and the reception afterward filled the Gallagher ranch house and spilled out into the yard. Owen gave a toast, his voice thick with emotion, as he spoke about his son and the life he was beginning, about the importance of love and partnership, and working together through good times and bad. As he spoke, his eyes found Sophia's in the crowd, and he was transported back to that day 12 years ago, when they had stood in that same church and made those same promises to each other. She was older now, her hair shot through with silver, her face lined with the marks of a life fully lived. But to him, she was as beautiful as the day he had first seen her, trapped in that well, her eyes full of hope and fear and stubborn determination. After Samuel and Sarah left for their honeymoon, a brief trip to Cheyenne, the ranch settled back into its usual rhythms. Clara took over more of the household management, preparing herself for when she would eventually run her own home. Thomas and William continued to grow like weeds, eating everything in sight and keeping everyone entertained with their antics. In 1893, Clara announced her own engagement to a young rancher named Jacob who had property adjoining theirs. Another wedding, another celebration, another child leaving home to start their own family. Owen found himself getting emotional more easily as he grew older, felt tears prick his eyes during Clara's wedding as he walked her down the aisle. The years continued their steady march. Samuel and Sarah had 3 children in quick succession, making Owen and Sophia grandparents and adding even more chaos and joy to family gatherings. Thomas showed an aptitude for horses that exceeded even Owen's skills, and by the time he was 16, he was traveling to other ranches to break their difficult mounts. William, always the quietest of their children, surprised everyone by announcing he wanted to be a teacher and began studying for the examinations that would allow him to do so. In 1898, as Owen and Sophia celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary, they took stock of their lives. The ranch was thriving, their children were all healthy and happy, and they had 10 grandchildren between Samuel and Clara, with more surely on the way. They had built something lasting, something that would continue long after they were gone. 20 years, Sophia marveled as they sat on the porch, in the same spots they had occupied for so many evenings over the decades. It does not seem possible that it has been that long. 20 of the best years of my life, Owen said. He took her hand, noting how her fingers had thickened with age and work, how her wedding ring was now tight on her finger. His own hands were gnarled and scarred, the hands of a man who had worked hard his entire life. "I would not change a single day." "Not even the hard days?" Sophia asked with a smile. "The droughts and the harsh winters and the times when we thought we might lose everything?" "Not even those," Owen said firmly, "because we got through them together, and they made the good times even sweeter." Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the land they had built their lives on. Owen thought about that day so long ago when he had been riding fence line and had heard a faint cry for help. He thought about how easily he might have missed it, might have continued on his way, and how different his life would have been if he had. But he had not missed it. He had heard her, had found her, had pulled her to light, and in doing so had found his own light, his own purpose, his own reason for being. Sophia had given him a family, a home, a legacy. She had given him love. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Owen squeezed Sophia's hand gently. "I love you," he said, as he had said so many times over the years. "I will always love you." "And I love you," Sophia replied, as she always did. "Until the end of time." They stayed on the porch until the night grew cold, reluctant to give up these moments of peace and togetherness. Inside, they could hear Thomas and William laughing about something, the sound of youth and energy and life continuing. Outside, the ranch stretched in all directions, the cattle settling for the night, the horses drowsing in the pasture, the land holding them all in its ancient embrace. As Owen and Sophia finally rose to go inside, Owen paused to look out across the property one more time. 20 years ago, this had been Sophia's father's small ranch, struggling to survive. Now it was a thriving operation, a legacy that would pass to their children and grandchildren. They had built this together, through hard work and love and partnership. He thought about the well, now safely covered and serving its purpose of providing water for the stock. It no longer frightened him, that dark hole in the ground. Instead, it was a reminder of how quickly life could change, how a single moment could alter the course of everything. It was a reminder to be grateful, to hold tight to the people you loved, to never take a single day for granted. "What are you thinking about?" Sophia asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "About wells," Owen said with a smile, "and about how I am glad I was the one who heard you calling." "So am I," Sophia said softly. She reached up and cupped his face in her hands, just as he had done to her so many times. "So am I." They went inside together, closing the door in the cool night air, their hands linked as they had been for 2 decades. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new reasons to be grateful. But tonight, they had each other, and they had the life they had built together, and that was more than enough. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new changes and new blessings. Thomas married a girl from Laramie and brought her home to the ranch, where they built a house on the western section of the property and began raising their own family. William finished his studies and became a teacher in Medicine Bow, beloved by his students for his patience and gentle manner. He eventually married the new doctor's daughter, and they settled in town, though they visited the ranch often. Samuel took over more and more of the ranch operations as Owen's body began to slow with age. Owen was in his 50s now, and decades of hard work had taken their toll. His back ached in the mornings, his hands were stiff with arthritis, and he could no longer put in the long days he once had. But he was content to let Samuel manage things, to serve as advisor rather than primary worker. Sophia, too, was showing her age. Her hair had turned completely silver, though it was still thick and beautiful, and she moved more slowly than she once had. But her mind was as sharp as ever, and she ruled over the family gatherings with love and wisdom. The matriarch of a clan that now included 4 children, 3 daughters-in-law, 1 son-in-law, and 15 grandchildren. In 1905, as Owen approached his 52nd birthday, he and Sophia took a rare trip away from the ranch. Samuel and Thomas had everything well in hand, and Clara had insisted that her parents deserved a few days to themselves. They traveled to Cheyenne, stayed in a proper hotel, and spent their days exploring the growing city that had been nothing but a rough railroad town when they had first come to Wyoming. On their last evening, they had dinner in the hotel's dining room, a luxury they rarely indulged in. As they ate, Sophia reached across the table and took Owen's hand. "Do you remember our wedding?" she asked. "How simple it was, just us and Martha and Julius and the preacher." "I remember," Owen said. "You were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in that blue calico dress." "I felt beautiful," Sophia said softly. "For the first time in my life, I felt truly beautiful because of the way you looked at me." "You are still beautiful," Owen said seriously. "More so now than then, because I know you so much better. I know your strength and your kindness and your courage. I know how you have stood beside me through everything life has thrown at us. That makes you beautiful in ways that have nothing to do with appearances." Tears filled Sophia's eyes, and she brought his hand to her lips and kissed it gently. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she said. "When I was trapped in that well, I thought my life was over. I thought I would die alone, having accomplished nothing, having loved no one and been loved by no one. But you changed all that. You gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams. We gave each other that, Owen corrected gently. I was lost before I found you, Sophia. I had no direction, no purpose beyond the next day's work. You gave me a reason to build instead of just drift. You gave me a family and a home and a future. We saved each other. They finished their dinner in companionable silence, then walked through the streets of Cheyenne hand in hand, like the young couple they had once been. When they returned to their hotel room, Owen held Sophia close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, feeling the solid warmth of her body against his. I want to grow old with you, he murmured into her hair. I want to see all our grandchildren grown. I want to sit on that porch with you for another 20 years, watching the sun set over our land. Then that is what we will do, Sophia said, tightening her arms around him. We will grow old together, and we will be grateful for every day we are given. They returned to the ranch renewed and refreshed, ready to enjoy the years they had left together. They settled into a comfortable routine, spending more time with their grandchildren, taking leisurely rides across the property, and spending their evenings on that beloved porch, talking and planning and simply being together. In 1910, they celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary with a grand party that brought the entire family together. The ranch house and yard were filled with children and grandchildren, with friends and neighbors, with the entire community they had built around themselves over the decades. Samuel gave a toast, thanking his parents for the example they had set, for the legacy they had created, for the love they had shown not just to each other, but to everyone around them. As Owen looked around at the assembled crowd, at the faces of his children and grandchildren, at the ranch that stretched out in all directions, he felt a profound sense of peace and accomplishment. This was what life was meant to be. Not easy, not without struggle or hardship, but full of love and purpose and meaning. Late that night, after everyone had finally gone home or to bed, Owen and Sophia took their customary places on the porch. The Wyoming sky was brilliant with stars, and a warm breeze carried the scent of sage and grass. 32 years, Owen mused. When I think about that scared young woman at the bottom of that well, and how she has become this incredible force of nature, the heart of this entire family, I am just amazed. I was not scared, Sophia protested with a laugh. Yes, you were. You were terrified. But you did not let that terror control you. You stayed strong, you kept calling for help, and you survived. Owen pulled her close. That is who you are, Sophia. A survivor, a fighter, the strongest person I have ever known. I survived because you found me, Sophia said. Everything I have become, everything we have built, exists because you heard my cries and pulled me to light. And I found meaning in my life because you let me help you, because you let me love you. Owen kissed her temple softly. We are quite a pair, are we not? The best pair, Sophia agreed. She nestled closer to him, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. The years that followed were gentle ones, full of the quiet joys of grandparenthood and the satisfaction of seeing their children's children begin to shape the future of the ranch. Owen's health began to decline in his late 50s, his heart growing weak, but he faced it with the same steady courage he had faced everything else in his life. Sophia nursed him through the bad days, just as he had once nursed her through her recovery from the well, and their love only deepened with time. In the spring of 1915, as the world beyond Wyoming was convulsing with war and change, Owen and Sophia celebrated their 37th anniversary quietly. Just the two of them on the porch they had sat on for so many evenings. Owen was weaker now. His breathing labored, but his eyes were clear and full of love as he looked at his wife. I need you to promise me something, he said, his voice thin but steady. Anything, Sophia replied, though her heart clenched with fear. She knew they were running out of time, knew that their years together were drawing to a close. Promise me that after I am gone, you will keep living, Owen said. Really living, not just going through the motions. Spend time with our children and grandchildren, ride across this land we both love, watch the sunsets, be happy. I do not know if I can be happy without you, Sophia said honestly, tears streaming down her face. Yes, you can, Owen said with certainty. Because you carry me with you always, just as I carry you. We are part of each other now, Sophia. Death cannot change that. I do not want to let you go, Sophia whispered. I know, and I do not want to leave you, but when the time comes, we have to trust that we will find each other again. I have to believe that a love like ours does not just end. Owen reached up with a trembling hand and wiped away her tears. Do you remember what I said to you on our wedding day? You said so many things, Sophia said with a watery laugh. I said I would love you until the end of time, Owen reminded her, and I meant it. This is not the end, Sophia. It is just a pause. We will meet again. I am sure of it. Sophia clutched his hand tightly, trying to memorize the feel of it, the warmth and strength that still lingered even as his body failed. I love you, Owen Gallagher. I have loved you from the moment you appeared at the top of that well and promised to save me, and I will love you until the stars fall from the sky. And I love you, Owen said softly. My brave, beautiful Sophia. Thank you for giving me the best years of my life. Thank you for our children and our grandchildren and this life we built together. Thank you for loving me. They sat together as the sun set one last time, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Owen's breathing grew more labored as darkness fell, and Sophia held him close, singing softly to him, telling him it was all right to rest, that she would be fine, that their children would take care of her. As the first stars appeared in the night sky, Owen drew one last, shuddering breath and went still in Sophia's arms. She held him for a long time, rocking him gently, whispering her love into his unhearing ears. When Samuel finally came looking for them and found them there, he had to gently pry his mother's fingers from his father's still hand. Owen Gallagher was laid to rest on the hill behind the ranch house, next to Sophia's father, with a view of the land he had loved and worked and built a life upon. The funeral was attended by what seemed like the entire territory, all the people whose lives he had touched over the decades. Samuel spoke about his father's strength and kindness. Clara spoke about his gentle wisdom. Thomas spoke about his skill with horses and his patience as a teacher. William spoke about his unwavering integrity and honor. But it was Sophia who spoke last, standing at the graveside with her children around her, her grandchildren scattered throughout the crowd. Her voice was steady as she spoke, though tears ran unchecked down her weathered face. 37 years ago, she began, I fell into a well and thought my life was over. I was alone, scared, and certain I was going to die. But Owen heard my cries. He climbed down into the darkness and pulled me to light. And then he spent the rest of his life continuing to pull me to light, every single day, in 100 different ways. He gave me love and partnership and a family. He gave me a life worth living. And though my heart is broken today, I am grateful for every single moment we had together. Owen Gallagher was the best man I have ever known, and I will love him until the day I join him in whatever comes next. As they lowered Owen's casket into the ground, Sophia stood straight and strong, supported by her children, but not broken by her grief. She would keep her promise to Owen. She would keep living, really living, for however many years she had left. And she did. Sophia lived for another 12 years after Owen's death, years filled with her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She remained active in the ranch's operations, offering advice and wisdom when asked, but content to let the younger generations take the lead. She spent her days in her garden, on horseback, riding across the land, and on that beloved porch, talking to Owen as if he were still sitting beside her. In the spring of 1927, at the age of 70, Sophia Bennett Gallagher passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was laid to rest beside her husband, and the entire community once again gathered to pay their respects to a woman who had been a pillar of strength and grace for nearly 5 decades. At the funeral, Samuel's oldest son spoke about his grandmother, about her courage and determination, about how she had built a legacy that would endure for generations. He spoke about the well, about how his grandfather had saved his grandmother's life, and how that single act had created a ripple effect that had touched hundreds of lives. They were two people who found each other in darkness and pulled each other to light, he said. And in doing so, they created something beautiful and lasting. They created a family, a home, a legacy of love and hard work and integrity. We are all here because of them, and we are all better because of the example they set. May we honor their memory by living as they lived, with courage and kindness and unwavering love for each other. The Gallagher Ranch continued to thrive under the management of Owen and Sophia's descendants. the story of how Owen had saved Sophia from the well became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The well itself remained, properly covered and maintained, a reminder of where it had all begun. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun set over the Wyoming prairie, family members would sit on the porch of the ranch house and swear they could feel the presence of Owen and Sophia, still together, still watching over the land and the family they had built. The love they had shared, forged in darkness and pulled to light, had proven to be truly timeless, echoing down through the generations as a testament to the power of compassion, courage, and commitment. Their story became more than just family legend. It became a part of the fabric of Medicine Bow itself, a reminder that sometimes the darkest moments can lead to the greatest blessings, that sometimes being in the right place at the right time can change not just one life, but countless lives stretching into the future. Owen and Sophia's love story, born from tragedy and blooming into something beautiful and enduring, stood as proof that true love could conquer any obstacle, survive any hardship, and create a legacy that would never fade. In the end, it was a simple story. A woman trapped in darkness, calling for help. A man who heard her cries and responded. Two lives that intersected at the perfect moment and became inextricably intertwined. Two souls that found in each other everything they had been searching for. And a love that, once kindled, burned bright and steady for the rest of their days and beyond. A beacon of hope and proof that even in the harshest frontier, love could not just survive, but thrive, creating something lasting and beautiful that would endure long after they were gone.